The Formula One caravan is back, and the Dutch GP has some interesting stories that we ought to enjoy. From the weather forecast that could shake up the entire pecking order to new rules by the FIA to encourage a two-stop strategy. What does Zandvoort hold for us in one of its latest editions? And more importantly, how would the two title protagonists end up after the Dutch GP following Norris's statement? Formula One is finally back after a long 3-week break. And when we go to Zandvoort, there is one thing we always need to keep in mind: the rain. It seems like the weather conditions are going to be quite wet, with chances of rain being around 80% throughout the 3 days of racing near the North Sea. Of course, there will be variations in wind speeds and temperatures, with Saturday offering the highest wind speeds of 30 to 40 gongli meesaucha. But overall, these conditions are always entertaining to have on a race weekend. They bring out the best in the driver. But in order for that to happen, the FIA needs to let them race and not allow itself another shameful debacle like the one in Spa. It's highly likely to be different here because the expectations of rain are throughout the entire weekend. In Spa, it was always expected that the rain would stop. However, teams believed they would race on the wet tarmac, which barely happened. Be that as it may, it would be a big pressure that the FIA would have to deal with and, of course, manage the expectations of the drivers and the fans in terms of how much rain is considered safe to race in. It's not just the rain. When you have this combination of rain and wind, the visibility is nearly zero, and then it's highly likely that there will be delays in the entire process of racing. So that's the first thing that should keep us on our toes. But what about the rule change in general? Zandvoort is a track that is highly demanding on the tyres due to its high number of corners. But if the track temperatures are low, many would aim towards the one-stopper. This has been the safest pit stop strategy for a long period of time, and the FIA has had some tough times trying to lure the teams into the two-stopper, which offers more drama and strategy. So for this year, along with Pirelli, a decision has been made to raise the speed limit in the pit lane from 60 to 80 gongli meesaucha. When talking about it in an official statement regarding this rule change, Pirelli wrote, "A further step in this direction stems from the FIA's decision to increase the pit lane speed limit from 60 to 80 gongli meesaucha, thus reducing the time taken for a pit stop. According to simulations provided by the teams, the one stop is still quickest, partly because overtaking is notoriously difficult at Zandvoort, with very few straights apart from the main one, combined with the fact the whole track is quite narrow. The sad part about Zandvoort is that this is one of the last editions of the race. After 2026, the track's contract with F1's ends due to financial reasons, but it's highly likely that the simple growth of F1 cars has made it a bit difficult to race here. Although traditional circuits are slowly but surely vanishing, I don't think there is anything we can do to stop that. What we can do when it comes to Zandvoort is expect some action from NASCAR and IndyCar 500 competitions that have shown interest in racing here if they were to visit Europe. But let's be a little bit more optimistic about the Dutch GP. They have a home hero to cheer for, and one that has won 3 times from 4 tries since the return of the circuit back in 2021. The situation of Verstappen and Red Bull, however, is not looking very optimistic as of now. The McLarens are far ahead, and the upgrades on the RB21 are simply not working. It also puts the second seat in danger because now the team finds itself in a very difficult position. They need to score points with both of their cars in order to not fall down into the midfield. I don't think Max is enough to keep Red Bull in the top 3, which can be seen from the current standings. Starting from Zandvoort onwards, yes. To say that Hamilton and Ferrari have any chance of fighting at the top is always going to be questionable because it's Ferrari that we're talking about. But the Monegasque did take pole position in Hungary. Had it not been for the car issues, he would have likely scored a podium or maybe even fought for the race win, which is why Stella believes that we're going to see a different version of Ferrari in the remainder of the season. Adding further on this, Andrea said, "I'm not surprised by Ferrari's pole position in Hungary because they have been competitive over the last few races. They were competitive in the dry in Silverstone, and they were competitive in Belgium. I think they are going to be a contender for victories for the remainder of the season. Definitely, anytime we are racing in the second part of the season, we would have to take into account that in qualifying and in the race, we would have to deal with Ferrari. And the never-ending question, what about the second seat at Red Bull? Yuki Tsunoda will be under pressure yet again, as he knows that drivers like Hajar, Lawson, and even Alex Palou are now ready to take his seat if he fails to improve in 2025. Although the general belief is that he is going to be replaced after 2025, Laurent Mekies decided to put a stop to these talks and set the priority straight. The goal is to give Yuki what he needs in order to rediscover his form with Red Bull. If he fails to do that, then Red Bull are going to look at their options. When elaborating further on this, the newly appointed team principal of Red Bull said the priority is to give Yuki what he needs to perform. With regard to the second seat, that's where the priority is. It's what the team is concentrating on. They have been trying that for a number of races now. We are trying to find ways together to make a further step. Spa was very positive. Certainly, from that perspective, Hungary was a tricky weekend overall, so it's probably a bit more difficult to judge, but there is no reason why Yuki's performance cannot be what we have seen in the past, and that's what we are concentrating on right now. All of this should be enough to keep us on the edge of our seats throughout the entire weekend. What we do hope is that the rain won't be torrential and won't ruin racing in general, because it's highly likely that we won't see the blue stripe tyres being used for these conditions. In general, Zandvoort never disappoints. And with all this in mind, what do you think about the upcoming race in the Netherlands? And more importantly, who do you think will be the leader in the Drivers' Championship after this race? Let us know in the comments below.